I am very honored to introduce our listeners on Unscripted with Mike and Chris to a three-time All-Star who played 18 seasons in the National Hockey League, scoring over 1,200 and, well, to be exact, 1,209 points, most notably the 9+ years spent with the Los Angeles Kings. The pride of Haliburton, Ontario, Mr. Bernie Nicholls joins us here on Unscripted with Mike and Chris. And before I bring Bernie into the program, we would be very remiss in our duties if we didn't wish happy birthday to Bernie, who turned 57 years old on Sunday, the 24th of June. So congratulations there, Bernie, and someone who's almost in your age bracket. I'll be 54 in November. It's really nice to talk to somebody that knows about the 70s and the 80s.
There you go. That's awesome. Thank you, guys.
These days, the former King, Ranger, Oiler, Devil, Blackhawk, and Shark is the part owner of a website called All Sports Market, what I like to call, from my research, the Wall Street for investing on sports teams. Bernie, while we have you, could you give us an idea and our listeners an idea of what All Sports Market is about?
Well, it's the first ever real money sports stock market. It's just like the New York Stock Exchange, but you can invest in your favorite sports team. You can invest in the Calgary Flames. You can invest in the LA Kings, the New York Yankees, any sports team, the Big Four. And it's the alternative, in my opinion, of gambling. I'm not sure you guys have ever dabbled into that in your past, but I have. And I tell people,
hey, Bernie, I have a home in Las Vegas, so absolutely I have made trips to one of the 76 casinos in the greater Las Vegas area.
Yeah, I tell people that there's nothing worse than going to meet your bookie on a Tuesday morning with an envelope full of $100 bills, and I've done that. But this here is it's not gambling, it's investing. If you invest in the Calgary Flames today, or let's use baseball for example, because they're still playing, but the Toronto Blue Jays, and they lose their game tonight, you don't lose your investment because it's not a bet. An investment doesn't expire and a bet does. And but the concept's brilliant. Like, we all have our favorite sports team no matter what it is. And let's use Calgary for example. The Calgary listeners there, they invest in Calgary and they have their true blue diehard Calgary Flames fans that just love their team. Whether it's the worst team in the league or the best team, they're going to feel like they want to invest in their team, and you get to watch your investment perform every night. What you can do with this, which I think is so brilliant, is if you're baseball, for example, if you got shares in any sport, but you got shares in the Toronto Blue Jays, and you look around the league and you see the New York Yankees got a homestand for 2 or 3 weeks, or the LA Dodgers, and they got bad teams coming in. You make an investment in them. They go, say, 16 for 18. You get paid dividends on every win. So you make money that way, and then your shares go up, turn around and sell them, look for another team. Or, I know this is not real good to you guys in Calgary, but we never started when McDavid got drafted. But for example, if you knew when he was going to get drafted, a super hockey player, Calgary or Edmonton's the worst team in the league, you buy shares in them, hold on to them for 2 or 3 years. If he does what he's been doing, obviously the shares are going to go up over time, turn around and sell them. You can do that, at any time. The trade deadline, I think, is so cool for hockey, right? Because you see teams that are going to make an investment or make a run at the playoffs. So you make an investment in them, buy their team, let them run out. If they end up winning the cup or do real well, their shares go up, turn around and sell them. Meanwhile, you still have shares in your favorite team, the Calgary Flames. So, it's just a really cool concept. Like I said, it gets away from the gambling part. You still have that excitement that you feel like you own a piece of your team. And like I said, it's better than gambling on teams like that. So to me, it's really a really cool concept.
If you are just joining us, we have been pleasantly joined by the 3-time National Hockey League All-Star who played 18 seasons in the National League, and now the part owner of a great, I think this is an unbelievable concept. It puts a different spin on sports for absolute sure, but he is the part owner of All Sports Market, and we're talking about Bernie Nicholls. And Bernie, the one thing that in my research for this that I was wanting to ask you, and you briefly mentioned it in the opening response to my question, there are always going to be people. It doesn't matter. And there are going to be people that get involved in this and maybe not take it to the extent, but what I'm getting at is that they're going to have questions. And this is about with the naysayers, the ones that can't get past issues such as gambling or addictive behaviors that, and anytime you have something that seemingly is fun, there's always some naysayers that have to put a negative spin on it. They don't know the real meal deal, but obviously they have some very strong opinions. But if you have a person like this that approaches you down in Las Vegas or when you're back home in Ontario or wherever you may be, and the conversation about all sports markets starts up, how do you get through these people to show them some of the things that are very good about all sports market?
Well, I think the main thing is just the part where I mentioned before that if you make a bet on a game, your bet's going to expire. It's going to expire when the game's over. Whether you win or lose, the bet is done. When you make an investment, it's long term. You can hold on to it forever. It never expires, and that's the big difference. You look at the New York Stock Exchange, and is it a gamble? People invest in gold or silver or whatever you invest in. Obviously, it's kind of a risk, I guess, and there's no difference here. But there's a big difference. Is it's not a bet. When your investment doesn't expire, you don't have to go out and spend, $2,000, $3,000, $10,000. You can buy shares for. It opened up at $2.50. Obviously, it's gone up now, but you can make shares for $50, $100. We actually have a free side as well. We recommend people go on, play the free side. You get $2,500 of free money to play with. So you go in and you play it, you understand it, and then when you feel comfortable that you want to put your real money in and go, then you do that. So, but like I said, there's a huge difference, and obviously people are going to question it because it seems like it's a gamble or you're betting. But the main thing is, and we've signed a nonprofit. We're a nonprofit company. It's definitely not gambling, and that's the main thing. And the funny thing is I went in to meet with the NHL. Our idea is once we get this thing regulated, we want to give 50% of every transaction made in their sport to the league, and I think that's unbelievable. We went in to met with the three leagues, and I met with Gary Bettman a couple of years back, and first thing he said to me is this gambling? I said, it's not gambling. So he said, okay, we'll listen, and they love the concept. It's free money for them for nothing, and so to me, there's nothing better.
So Bernie, in my research and looking through interviews you've done on the website, what I really noticed was there seems to be a real sense of pride when it comes to how this can really promote financial literacy in children. I've said for a long time, I'd love to see a lot of changes to the curriculum that students have to go through in public school. I'd love to see some sort of workout theory added. I'd love to see some sort of financial literacy.
Yeah.
Something like this is great. I've seen that you need to be 13 years old to join the site, and I also saw that it's deposits are capped at $2,500 a year. Just wondered if you'd talk about how important it is to you to sort of facilitate the learning of financial literacy in children and how you're trying to also kind of cap how much they can actually put into your site.
Well, and that was the key thing too, right? With the $2,500 a year, we don't want people coming in and putting $10,000, $100,000 into it. We want them to, start slow. So we did cap it, and the free side, we really are promoting that for young kids, learning financing through sports. I think that's such a powerful tool for us, and to do that, to get the kids involved that way, looking into it in the free side, like I said. Or you mentioned you got to be 13 years old to do it, but the free side is just that. It's a learning tool for all people, but obviously we're promoting the kids to get in there and learning financing through sports. And I think that's, like you said, it's a very powerful tool.
Bernie, kind of echoing what Chris just said, but in a different avenue, if you will. you had mentioned that you talked with all the heads of state, if you will, with the respective Big Four, meaning Bettman in the National Hockey League, the National Football League, and yada, yada, yada. But did you have to get kind of a authorization or the okay from these leagues once you sat down with them and you explained what your concept was? You made it painfully clear to them that this wasn't a gambling site. Is that something that you had to do to get this launched back a couple years ago when you officially launched this site?
No, actually, we don't need the leagues involved to do it. The way we've created it through the platform, we don't need them. But as a former player, and that was one thing that I wanted to do, is I wanted to give back to the league. So that was kind of the idea of doing that, where we are giving back, but we absolutely don't need them. But it just adds to, our company to be involved with the Big Four, so to speak. And like I said, we met with 3 of them, never met with football. We are meeting with actually football this summer to do that. But that's our goal, is to have all 4 teams involved and, give back to them.
When you sat down and you began preparations to launch the all sports market, what were some of your biggest concerns?
When this company first came over, they actually went to Congress. They went and explained everything in the U.S. here, everything that we had, everything that we wanted to do to make sure we did it right. We didn't want any loopholes of illegal gambling or anything like that. So we took all the right avenues to make sure it's done right legally. Now what we're trying to do is, we're in Ontario, we started, and in California is getting it just regulated. To get it regulated, we have a patent. We have our patent pending in I don't know how many countries, but it's approved in China. But we want to get it regulated so people pay taxes on it and stuff, just like everything else. And like the whole concept's brilliant. I really believe that we've done it right. We've taken all the right channels to make sure it's all legal and there's no any loophole at all that we would come across as not doing things right. We've checked all those boxes and done everything. So we've got this thing dialed in right. And like I said, we're taking every step to make it the best product out there for people. And like I said, it's way better alternative than gambling, even though they're kind of legalizing gambling around the U.S. and that right now. But still, I think when people see what we have, they would sooner do that.
Well, that was my next question as a follow-up, and you just touched on it briefly. But with the news a couple of weeks ago that the United States Supreme Court ruled on legalizing sports betting in all 50 U.S. states, is this something that excites you? It has to.
Well, what that will probably do is just speed up our regulation, because then there won't be absolutely no gray area. Like we mentioned earlier, for people that are skeptic, that are trying to, and we've had people before where they wouldn't do things with us because they still think it's gambling, even though it's not, and we've proven it's not, but it's still a gray area. So with that happening, that can only speed us up and even make us better at the end of the day.
Well, I think you really are doing it the right way there, Bernie, and it certainly can't hurt to get the leagues on board. But now, how about expanding beyond the Big Four? I mean, there's a lot of candidates, like, say, the CFL would be an obvious one. How you could take this anywhere, though? You could go into individual sports like tennis or golf. I mean, how about betting on professional wrestling? How about betting on Daniel Negreanu and your favorite poker player and how they're going to do at the World Series of Poker? Like,
right.
How far are you planning on taking this?
Well, first and foremost, I don't know if you realize you were calling betting. And we went over that. It's not betting, right? It's investing. But our next step is soccer, for sure. Soccer is global. It's probably the biggest sport. Obviously in the U.S. or in North America, it's football. But, I mean, soccer is global, and it's the biggest. And I think that's our next one. But absolutely, we want to do the CFL, NASCAR. We want to do every sport. So, and individual sports, I think you can invest in golf players, tennis players as well. So, like I said, once we get this thing dialed in, we started with the Big Four, but then our main goal is we want them all.
How did Canadian actor and your chief executive officer of the project, Zach Ward, get involved, Bernie?
Well, he's friends of the people that are in California there that our CEO and stuff, and we thought he would be a great person to add to what we have as well. He's well connected in California and in the movie industry and just globally as well. So we just try to add people to our company that can help out in any way, shape, or form, and Zach's been able to do that. He's opened up some great doors for us.
I have to ask this question because I'm intrigued. I would want to invest soon, obviously, with my favorite National Football League team, the Green Bay Packers. But are there some teams that are better than others for investing purposes, and how do you set your stock prices?
The stock prices all started the same when we launched that particular sport, and now the people will move it. It's not necessarily the best teams that are the highest trading team, because the fans will move it. Like, for example, Toronto, because of their fan support, will be one of the biggest ones. The New York Yankees, teams like that will probably be higher than most because the fans will move it. And that's what happens with all the sports. The fans will move. They will dictate at the end of the day what the value of your teams are going to be.
So you're going to get better odds, let's say, or better prices if you're investing on the Los Angeles Chargers, as an example, or the Arizona Coyotes, teams that aren't as popular and aren't as mainstream as some of the big boys are.
That's right. But with saying that now, and that's the great thing about this here, is that if you see a team that makes a big trade or gets the first round draft choice or something, and their team's going to be really good, is you make that investment because, like I say, you get paid dividends on every win, and obviously wins are going to move your the needle as well. So that's one of the good concepts that we have, or that I like with this here, is good teams. If you see a team that's going to be good, you get to play GM or owner, so to speak, and you get to pick a team that you think is going to do very well and invest in them. And meanwhile, you still have your investment in your favorite team.
Well, Bernie, on this topic, when it comes to, if we can contrast this with actual sports betting, so what the guys in Vegas are known for doing is they might put a bit of a tax on the publicly backed teams. If you're going to bet on the Dallas Cowboys or the Pittsburgh Steelers or someone like that, some really popular team, it's pretty well known that you're going to pay a little more than you might if they weren't such a popular team. Are you saying that it's the same thing with all sports market? Are you going to pay a bit of a premium to bet on the really cool teams?
Yeah, like right now, and I don't have the board in front of me, but every team is trading at a certain number right now because it's been live for the last year with real money. So your better teams are going to be trading obviously higher, and but that's not to say that there's not going to be some sleeper teams out there right now starting the season. Like you said, the Chargers or some teams that have made some deals over the course of the season. If they or over the summer, if you think they're going to do well, you're going to get them at a shorter price.
If you are just joining us, we are unbelievably honored to be joined on this edition of Unscripted with Mike and Chris, with former National Hockey League All-Star Bernie Nicholls. And Bernie, I want to switch the gears a little bit now over to your playing career, which we determined was 18 years, and that's an unbelievable number and a credit to you. And I want to pull one thing out here. You roll in some pretty high cotton of company, and what I mean by that, you are one of 5 players in National Hockey League history to score 150 or 150 plus points in a given season. And in that club, besides Bernie Nicholls, is a guy named Gretzky, a guy named Lemieux, a guy named Steve Yzerman, and Phil Esposito. I know what Chris would say when I ask this question. Unbelievable stat line in 1988-89 when you had 70 goals, 80 assists for 150 points. I mean, in this day and age, Bernie, that's a career for some of these ham and eggers in the National Hockey League now. But my question is, why is that? Why don't we see prolific scoring? Is it Chris's opinion is, and I agree with it wholeheartedly, but I'd be interested in listening to a National Hockey League All-Star. Is it the goalie equipment? Is it the size of the players in the game itself? Is it certain coaches' tendencies on defense? You played for Jacques Lemaire in New Jersey, and he was obviously famous for the neutral zone trap. Why don't we see prolific scoring seasons like that? I mean, guys are getting, I would imagine that you would love to be an active player in the National Hockey League right now, because if you put up 150 points in a season, you'd be a multimillionaire per season. So what is it about the National Hockey League that we don't see those kind of prolific scoring seasons anymore?
Well, I honestly think more than anything, it's goaltending, and that's no disrespect to the goalies. When I played, goalies are so much bigger, and they're just better athletes now. Goalies are 6'6", 6'4". Jonathan Quick in LA, he's like 6'2". He looks like a linebacker. His lower body, he weighs probably about 215, 220, and they're just amazing athletes. And like I said, no disrespect to the guys when, in the 80s or the 90s, but goalies were a little smaller back then, and they were good. But I think that's the biggest thing. The players are bigger and faster. Like, to me, honestly, I think they have more opportunities now to score goals too. There's more power plays, more 5-on-3. Like I said before, I'd love to see Gretz and Mario play in today's game, just because, like, they have more 5-on-3s in one season than I've had my whole career. Gretz had his whole career, to me, that there's more opportunities to score goals now. They do. The 3-on-3, the more penalties that are being called. You can't touch a guy in front of the net. Like, my God, I would never go in front of the net when I played. They'd beat the hell out of you, right? Now you can just camp out there and you can't be touched. So, it's kind of a double-edged sword. There's way more opportunities for players to score more, and they should. And like I said, I'm not going to disrespect the players today. You still have some great goal scorers, but I'm not sure they were any better than the goal scorers in the 80s and the 90s either. So to me, just to sum it up, I just think the goalies are just better.
I think Wayne would have scored 1,000 points just in 3-on-3 overtimes.
Or 5-on-3 and 4-on-3 power plays. It's amazing. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's so much room out there. It's not even funny. But also with the goal, we totally agree. We're on the same page when it comes to goalie talent, and certainly they go for all the 6'6" guys now. Where I think back in the day there were no 6'6" guys in the league. But also goalie equipment, though. I mean, when you saw Garth Snow put on a pair of goalie pads, it was like a couple of garage doors on his legs. I mean, is the goalie equipment too big?
Well, maybe it is. I think a goalie would be better to ask that, Mike Vernon or Kelly Rudy, someone that, but like I say, goalies are so big, right? But it's how flexible. Like I say, these goalies are so flexible now. They do the split, and their legs are on each post, and their shoulders are up at the crossbar. Like, there's not much room, right? Like, it's unbelievable. And the sticks, I think the sticks too. I would love to play with the sticks back in the day that they have today. Like, those things are so good.
Bernie, are you familiar at all with the show David Faraday on the Golf Channel?
Love them. Absolutely. Yes.
I like to do something similar to what he does with rapid fire. You're not going to get a dime for this, as the same thing that he does with his guests, but I have a number of questions that are basically just 1 or 2 word answers that I'd like to hit you with, if you're okay with that.
Absolutely.
When you were playing in your 18-year career, biggest pest or antagonist in your day?
Maybe Esta Tikkanen or Claude Lemieux.
Perfect. What building was the toughest to play in for a visiting player?
Oh, my favorite was the old stadium in Chicago, by far. Was
the Madhouse on Madison.
But probably the toughest would be, oh man, maybe the Montreal Forum.
Ooh, Montreal Forum. That's a good one. Absolutely. What did you find to be the biggest difference between playing for a Canadian National Hockey League franchise and an American one?
Well, I always say this, right? Like, I was fortunate to play in some great cities, LA, Chicago, Original Six, New York. But as a Canadian boy, to play anywhere in Canada, and I know it's Edmonton, but I mean, Edmonton, Calgary, any Canadian city would have been amazing. I just think the fans, hockey's just our sport, so to play in Canada anywhere was just amazing.
You played 1,127 games over your 18-year playing career. Which coach that you played for did you work best with?
I honestly think the best coach I ever had was Jacques Lemaire. Montreal Canadiens. I don't know, 10-time Stanley Cup. What a franchise to learn from. Pat Quinn was maybe my favorite. Pat reminded me a lot of my dad, a big burly man that he treated me great, and he was pretty special. Just to add to that, like, I played for Herb Brooks. There was never, I used to be at the edge of my seat every pregame just to hear Herb's speech. You never know what was going to be that game, but it could be about a horse, it could be about the war, it could have been about anything, and it was just magnificent. So I was fortunate to play some great coaches, but I know I named a few.
I am a little bit biased being an American and watching Herb Brooks years ago when he was at the University of Minnesota. But I still think one of the greatest moments in the game of hockey was when Herb Brooks led the U.S. to the improbable 1980 gold medal win. I know they played Finland for the gold medal game, but they really had to get through the Russians, and that's what they did. I still think that's one of the greatest accomplishments that you can be part of, because the USA in hockey is it's not as synonymous with success as it is in Canada. And what Herb Brooks did with that team was still, to this day, almost 40 years later, is still really, really impressive.
I agree. Yes.
Bernie, what was it like for a Canadian kid from Ontario to get the chance to play with the great one, Wayne Gretzky?
Well, I tell people this, and I mean it, like, honest to God, it was like Christmas Day every day. I was very fortunate, and I was Wayne's shadow, and I've asked different people from Edmonton if Wayne did that. Like, every day Wayne had me hanging with him. Every road trip, it was him and I. We went out to dinner. I kid with people, right? I hate McDonald's. Now, every day after practice, Wayne would say, "Let's go have lunch," right? And it was McDonald's 200 yards up the street from our practice rink in Culver City. But you're going to go, right? But it was awesome, and it was so cool. It was like, and I say this different times, like game day, like before you go out, Wayne would come up to me and he'd just give me a little tap on my knee pads or something and say, "Hey, we need you tonight," right? And in your mind, you're going, "Oh my God, that's Gretz," right? But he was just a special person. You wanted to play hard for him every day. The passion he has towards the game, the ambassador is for our game. There's not a better person in the world, in my opinion, than Wayne. And just to have the opportunity. I only played with him for a year and a half, and I couldn't imagine playing with him for 10 years. It would just been unbelievable.
Unbelievable. If you are just joining us, we are being joined at this time by former National Hockey League All-Star Bernie Nicholls. And Bernie, before I hand the microphone over to Chris, there's one question that I desperately have wanted to ask you when I started prepping for this. Because this is it's interesting to me to talk to somebody that's in my age group, if you will, and I understand. I had a little bit, certainly not to your extent, but I had a little bit of athletic success in my late teens and into my early 20s. But I wonder this question, and obviously I'm talking to a guy that spent 18 years playing at the highest level of professional hockey. But growing up in Ontario, growing up in the country of Canada, obviously, where hockey is number one, and whoever tells you lacrosse is Canada's national sport is full of crapola. But during your career, was there ever a time playing the game of hockey? And I'm going back to when you started back in Ontario as a minor hockey player, and obviously progressing through to the different levels all the way to the National League. But during your career, was there ever a time that playing the game of hockey became a job for you?
No, it didn't. And I think, and I've got criticized over time because fans or media would see me talking to players out there, laughing. I had fun. You know, it reminds me a little bit if you watch Drew Doughty out there. He's always smiling, talking, you know. So it never did. It was always fun for me. I just loved playing it. I loved going to the rink every day. And even to this day, if I go do a charity event, which I do a lot all winter, when I put my skates on, when I go out in the ice, it just feels like, you know, your chest gets up and it just feels like you're grit. Like I just feel that way. It's still so much fun for me to go play a game. It's unbelievable.
So, Bernie, as a resident of the greatest city in the world, Las Vegas, I'd like to know what it was actually like firsthand there for you to be on the ground for this improbable Cinderella run by the Vegas Golden Knights in their inaugural season. And more than that, I'd like to know your projections from the future on what this is going to lead to. Specifically, I think about how certain things can really energize or lead to a resurgence in certain markets. I think of Wayne getting sold, not traded, to the LA Kings and the Wayne Gretzky effect in Southern California. I think about when teams make it to the finals. You think about the Tampa Bay Lightning or the Carolina Hurricanes getting an energized fan base. You think about the Calgary Flames in 2004. Nobody had a jersey, and then all of a sudden everybody had a jersey after the Red Mile. So what do you think that this amazing run to the Stanley Cup Finals is going to do for the long-term success of hockey in Las Vegas? And what was it like to be a part of it in Vegas while it was happening?
Well, obviously, I don't think anybody expects them to do what they did. But I think it shows how good our league really is when with the draft, the entry draft, they got to pick, I think, you only could protect, I think, 8 players. So they picked maybe the 9th best player or whatever was the best player was available from every team. And they put together a team that went to the finals. It just shows how deep our league is. To me, you know, I've said this different times, and as much as Canada, you know, hockey's Canadian, wherever they can take a team that will support it, I'm all for that. I don't like, you watch a game in Florida and a good team's there and there's nobody in the stands, or Carolina. And if they want to put 3 teams in Toronto, put 3 teams in Toronto because they'll support it. Or, you know, as long as they support it, I'm good with it. Like when they made the draft or the run here for season tickets, they had to sell, I think, I don't know how many, but enough for 3. So they're sold out for 3 straight years. And I think obviously it's going to help that they did so well, but I'm not sure, but maybe Seattle's supposed to be the next place. If they support it, great. But I mean, I don't like seeing empty seats in any of the U.S. cities. And if that's the case, you know, Quebec, I know Quebec would sell out and be good. Like when they went to Winnipeg, thank God they went back there. What great fan support we got in Winnipeg right now. So wherever they support it, I'm good with it. If they want to expand it, great. I think we got to be careful with too many teams, but right now it's pretty competitive.
Bernie, I know that I've gone over our allotted time, but I've just truly enjoyed this, and I promise I've only got a couple more. But I really am interested in not only for our listeners of Unscripted, but myself to listen to your responses to this. My second last question to you: in 2012, you returned to the LA Kings organization as a coaching consultant. How much different was Bernie the player versus potentially Bernie the coach?
Well, I was really very fortunate. I had Daryl Sutter as a coach twice. I know Daryl really well. I've made calls a couple times before because with LA, and I was watching their power play and they struggled, and I called the general manager and I said, look, I want to help out any way I can, right? So when Daryl took over, I called him and said, look, I'd love to come and help. And he said, sure, love to have you, and I went, okay. So it was an amazing run, right? I tell people I hung with the players more than I hung with the coaches because I love working with the kids, hanging out with them more than the coaches anyways. But just being a part of that, watching it, going through the run that they had was obviously very special. Never won a cup as a player, but to win one as an assistant coach, knowing exactly what the players were going through and getting to experience what they did was a lot of fun and something that I really enjoyed doing. Like I say, no matter if you're out golfing or whatever, I love to help people, right? And just to be able to do that was so much fun. And just so thankful for Daryl let me be a part of it.
Well, I was one of the few lucky ones that was smart enough to put a little money down on the 2012 and 2014 Los Angeles Kings. So Daryl Sutter from Viking, Alberta will always be top drawer in my book for damn sure.
Yeah, that's right.
Before we get out of here, and again, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your busy day to come on and be our special guest here on Unscripted with Mike and Chris. But 3 trips to the National Hockey League All-Star Game. You won a silver medal at the 1985 World Championships representing Canada in Czechoslovakia. But as you just mentioned in your previous response to my question, you never won a Stanley Cup championship. Great career, obviously. But is the no cups, is that something that bothers you to this day, or it's just something that wasn't meant to be for Bernie Nicholls?
I think it just wasn't meant to be. Like, I played on some great teams, and have an opportunity to win one as a coach, you realize, and watching guys win it like Alex Ovechkin there, I couldn't imagine. I still dream about playing and winning the cup. I really do. I couldn't imagine what it would be like to win it, but I do. I think about it all the time. As a professional athlete, to play any sport and not win it absolutely hurts. But, to be able to play in the National Hockey League for as long as I did and meet as many people as I did and just play the game. That's why we play. We play it for the love of the game. To win it would obviously be a tremendous bonus, but I wasn't fortunate to do that.
Bernie, thank you so very much for your time. We truly appreciate it. Nothing but the best with this unbelievably progressive concept of the all sports market at .com. For our listeners of Unscripted with Mike and Chris, please go visit allsportsmarket.com and get a feel of what Bernie and his partnership group and his buddies are trying to accomplish down in Las Vegas. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful concept. I like that you have the freedom and the sense of ownership. I mean, if you're putting up your dime, you're controlling, to what I know, you're controlling how well or how poorly you do in this. So the investing thing is a fabulous idea. I will invest in the Green Bay Packers as long as Aaron Rodgers stays healthy. But having said all that, most importantly, thank you very much for taking time out. We truly appreciate it. And nothing but the best of luck in all your future endeavors.
Well, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun. We'll do it again.
That is the voice of former National Hockey League All-Star Bernie Nicholls here on Unscripted with Mike and Chris.
Unscripted.